Hi, loves. Welcome back to Love, Sex, and Magic with me, your host, Mel Wells. And I'm really excited to bring you today's episode because I'm sitting down with Alyson Charles, who is an internationally renowned shaman. I love that she calls herself a rock star shaman, and we get into exactly where that term comes from and what that means to her. She is a best-selling author. She has a brand new book coming out soon on power animals. She's the host of Ceremony Circle podcast, and she went from being a national champion athlete, top-rated radio host, and national daytime television talk show host to aligning with her spiritual calling as a shaman after a traumatic moment provided her awakening. So in this episode, in this conversation, we talk all about ancient sacred wisdom. We talk about ceremony. We talk about shamanism, bringing ancient wisdom into the modern day 3D world. We talk about different rituals that we can do to help us lean into our shamanic gifts. We talk about power animals, connecting with spirit animals, traumatic experiences leading to spiritual awakenings, and so much more. This episode is so rich in magic and medicine, and I can't wait for you guys to experience it. So let's dive in. Cool. Alyson, it is so good to have you here. Thank you so much and welcome to the show.
Thank you, dear sister. It's been a long time coming, so I'm just happy to be here with you.
It has been a long time coming. I remember first discovering and connecting with you on Instagram and seeing that you it's like you title yourself as the rockstar shaman, which when I saw that, I was just like, oh my God, I had like full body goosebumps because I was like starting to get introduced to the world of shamanism and specifically around plant medicine. And I hadn't really seen anyone speaking about it in the way that you do, which is so contemporary and so badass and so cool. And I think I sent you a message like, oh my God, I'm obsessed with you. Like, you're so amazing. Like, love what you're about. So I'd love if we can like start there, because I think a lot of people have different interpretations of what the word shaman means or shamanism means. So I'd love to hear, like, what does that mean to you?
Definitely. Yes. And I remember that message. And, thank you for, allowing yourself to feel the power of my mission and of the instructions and assignments that have come in for me and the way that my shamanic path is supposed to work. Because as you have been embarking on that path and, you've been on the spiritual path for a long time, you know that every spiritual teacher and every shaman is different, right? So I have just been in complete devotion to surrendering to the calls and guidance of the way that my shamanic path and my shamanic medicine is to be of service this lifetime. And while I've done this work for many lifetimes, yes, I can tell that this lifetime it is functioning differently, but we are here in the modern age. And so there are a lot of spiritual teachers that are witnessing the way in which our teachings are supposed to go out into the world. It's different. So for me, after I had my spiritual awakening and divine intervention, the first vision, one of the very first visions, if not the first vision that came in after all of my spiritual gifts started to come on board, was this rock star shaman title. And I saw a picture of me on stage in front of thousands of people, delivering shamanic teachings. And I could tell that the way I'm supposed to do it is in a very public format. And you merge with that, my background being a radio host and a television host. And I know that you and I share a lot of parallels in terms of, coming from the entertainment world and having our awakenings and now aligned with our true calling. And so, while that initial vision made sense to me, I could feel the magnitude of it. I could feel the boldness of it. I could feel the responsibility of it. And I didn't take any of that lightly. And I did a lot of very deep initial work around that piece specifically. When I heard that title come in, I thought, oh my gosh, okay, this is unique, and it carries a lot with it because the word shaman can be very sensitive to a lot of people. So I did do a lot of guided shamanic journeys, and calling in my main love and light guide this lifetime is Ascended Master Jesus. And I called him forward in that first journey to affirm with him, is this of ego? Is this of divinity? Is this really truly how my medicine is to work? And he and the rest of my guides were emphatic in saying, yes, this is why you are here. This is why you incarnated, is to deliver shamanism and the remembrance of it to the mainstream and to the masses, especially over here in the US, where so many people have gotten disconnected and forget the power of rituals and forget that they hold within them all of this ancient wisdom. And it's not just me, it's all of us. So if I need to be the one that holds that space as powerfully as I possibly can and devote to remembering myself and reconnecting myself to all of the incredible magic and miracles that we hold within us. And it also, the other little thing that I want to make sure to touch on in terms of shamanism, we walk equally in both worlds. So I am just as much rooted and in my body and present here to the earth plane as much as I am rooted and connected to the unseen realms and to the astral plane. So we walk with a foot in both worlds at all times, and we're able to receive in codes and messages and energetic transmissions and visions and guidance to then share with whoever is open to receive and leaning into the work. We're simply the deliverers and the messengers and the transmitters of the highest divine energies and teachings that want to go to the person who is open to receive. So I mean, I could honestly take the whole podcast to try to explain, what shamanism is and how it works for me. That's as tight of a nutshell as I can get it. But I'm really here merging the power of ancient wisdoms and ancient rituals and teachings into the modern world, to the masses and to the mainstream. And the very last thing that I'll say is that while my shamanic way is working directly to Great Mother Earth, that's where the rock part of Rockstar Shaman comes in, and directly up to Source Great Spirit, which is where the star part comes in. So that's what Rockstar Shaman means. It's my connection to Earth, connection to Source, and walking the path. Even though that's the way my path works, I very much honor First Nations. There are a lot of shamans that adhere to sacred oaths that work specifically with ancient lineage traditions that are earth-based. And I've had the honor of sitting with many of those people, many of those elders and teachers, and have, learned so much and sat in sacred ceremonies with them that have completely changed my life. Luke, my fiance, and I got together through one of said ceremonies, sitting with sacred plant medicine peyote with, incredible teachers and indigenous traditions. So I just want to let people know how mine works, and that there are other shamans that adhere to earth-based lineages. However, shamanism, when entered into with reverence and respect, it is for all humans. Shamanism holds within it the truths of this planet and the truths of all the universes. So it is for all to learn from, to lean into, to activate your own divine powers and purpose and truths. But the key is doing it with integrity and honor and respect.
Wow, that is so beautiful. There's so many incredible points that you made in that, and I think the first one that really stands out that I want to just touch on is, I love the rock star, how you explain that, like one foot on the earth and then the other pointing up to the skies. And I think that's what really spoke to me about your work and your mission, is you do feel very much in both worlds. You're not trying to kind of abandon the 3D to only like live in the spiritual realm. You're very much like this is our mission here on earth, and you make everything super real and super digestible for people who are at the start of this path. That's what we need. Because I think that's what people need to connect to, especially at the start of such a path. And the other thing as well is I really appreciate everything that you've shared about like different forms of shamanism and how it means different things to different people. When I've sat with some of the indigenous shamans in medicine ceremonies, I've put my hand up and asked, like, what is the deal with like sharing this work with the world? Like, because you hear people say that it's like the shamanism practices have been colonized and kind of taken out of context, and used by Westerners and all this kind of stuff. And every time that someone or I ask this question to these healers, the answer is usually always like along the same lines of like, the world is very sick right now, the medicine needs to travel, so we need to get these messages and these rituals and these ceremonies out to the masses whilst still maintaining the sacredness and the intentionality and the integrity of it all.
Absolutely. Yes. And one of the other important points that comes up as you're sharing that is anytime if you're feeling the call, of a certain sacred plant medicine or of a certain tradition or of a certain teacher, and you answer that call and, you sit in a ceremonial space with said teacher or medicine, or you're called to a certain location on the planet because there's something there that you're supposed to activate or learn. You should just always keep in mind, anything that's shared in that time, whether it's a ritual, a practice, a sacred song, a prayer, anything, if it really deeply speaks to you, always go to the facilitator, to the guide, to the teacher, and ask. Oftentimes, like, if there are things that I'm sharing in a ceremonial way that can be shared and passed on, and that everyone there has the permission to continue in their own personal practice, or if they're also teachers, they have the permission to also continue to share to their students and their clients, I will let them know. But it's always best to ask, because there are a lot of sacred traditions. Let's just say, for one example, the Mamos who come from Colombia. I've had the fortunate honor to sit with them a number of times, and more often than not, they do ask us to keep what was shared during that time private, and that we're not to pass on what was shared there. But there are a lot of teachers who do want the teachings to go on. So it's all very specific and very detailed and very nuanced. So when in doubt, just always ask. Like, I myself and all of the shamanic colleagues that I am close to who are non-Indigenous, Indigenous, whatever color, whatever possible color, whatever location on the planet, we all come for the most part from the exact same belief of, as long as this is all done in alignment with integrity, and you're keeping in mind being respectful and being responsible and asking questions, rather than assuming things. That's the most important thing. And there's a big difference between cultural appropriation and cultural appreciation. And when you are, so many of us are such ancient souls, and, we've lived a lot of lives and lived, a lot of those past lives in various places of the planet. You might feel a really strong connection to a certain tradition, to a certain place on earth. And, you never want to cut off that call or pretend that you don't feel that connection out of fear of appropriating. And, I will also just close it by saying that, and even though my shamanic medicine does not adhere to a certain lineage based way, when I have worked with elders and teachers whose whose offerings due, when this question is asked of them, they're so moved and feel so elated within themselves that people of all walks of life and all colors are leaning into shamanism, that want to learn about these cultures and about these traditions and ways. And sometimes, they'll even say, there are people in our own family who don't feel the call and don't want to take the time to learn these rituals. So to see all of you coming from all different places of the earth and wanting to learn and doing it in such an honoring way, it makes them so happy. So it is, this specific talking point, it's a very broad one. It's a very ancient one. Again, it's another very sensitive one. But as long as you are honoring the call of your soul, as long as you are honoring the traditions, the ways, you're honoring the teacher, it's above all else, it's most important to listen to what your soul is guiding you to do, because and that's the absolute key, and aligning with your purpose here. It's the key to unlocking, all the magic and wisdom inside of you. And it's ultimately, in shamanism, we want to unite with our soul. We don't want to be disconnected or fragmented from any part of ourselves. So just listen to the calls and do it the absolute best you can with reverence and respect. And we also embrace non-perfection. We're here to infinitely evolve. So if within that learning and evolution and growth-based process that is Earth life, if there are some bumps and some crunches and some hits to the ego where you are humbled and where your humility is really activated, it's all a part of this juicy experience called life. And I think the more that we can be compassionate with one another and hold a space of non-judgment and kind questioning versus, condemning and canceling, the better this entire planet will be.
I absolutely could not agree more with you. And I love the distinction between cultural appropriation and appreciation. And I completely agree with everything that you've just shared so, so beautifully. So thank you for that. It needed to be said. Just moving on to like medicine work. Like, I think people on this podcast, if they've been listening a while, they've probably heard me share about plant medicine. But I want to kind of dig a little deeper with you into the different forms of ceremony and journeying that there are, because it's not all about plant medicine. There's so much more to the work that you do. And I know that you love drumming journeys and ceremonies as well. I know that you're also very big into power animals, which I really want to dive into a little bit later. But can you like give people like an idea of like the different kinds of journeying and shamanic medicine that's available to them outside of the world of plant medicine?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where my entire shamanic activation and calling and path, began and remained for many years on my path. So after I had that awakening and devoted to my own healing and surrendered and finally got out of my own way and got out of a lot of illusions and denials and was really committed to healing and holding myself. And the truth of the shaman in me came alive more and more and more. For many years, even after I had the awareness that I am a shaman, that my calling is to deliver shamanism in this way, that was already loud and clear and known. And for many years after that, there was not a single sacred plant medicine that had called to me. And I didn't know, honestly, if this entire lifetime, if any of them ever would. And so, yes, I'm glad you brought this up, because there are some misconceptions that shaman and shamanism equates to plant medicine use, and it's not an automatic equation there, because shamanism at its core is connecting to, it's a lot of what rockstar shamanism is. It's connecting to Great Mother Earth and learning her and speaking to her and seeing what you can do to offer things to her, to know that she is seen and valued and respected, and learning what source and great spirit is, connecting up to the cosmos, and also learning various rituals to enhance your connection line to the unseen realms. And there's so much. I mean, there's infinite teachings that come, just from working with those two connection points. I mean, all of the different benevolent guides that, power animals being one of the main ones, they were the first guides after my veil lifted and I had my awakening to come in. And the four that entered in were my core power animal, which is the Black Panther. The deer also came in, the frog, and the bear. And those four animals really were my saving grace as I was, my world had been turned upside down. And each animal brings different healing properties and medicinal attributes and teachings. They are our allies. They're our brothers and sisters, just as we are their brothers and sisters. So they came in like my family to help heal me and to keep me strong and to not have my heart closed down. And so my relationship with them has only grown and grown and grown throughout the years. And I have learned to emphatically trust them, and they have learned to emphatically trust me, to the point where, I've been on stage in front of 15,000 people doing live channeled power animal readings, where I call someone up on stage who wants to willingly come up and have messages delivered to them from the power animal world. And that's live in real time in front of thousands and thousands of people. And I know that those animals are there and they are present for me the second I need to tune into them to see who's going to present and what message they're going to convey for me to share with the person. And they also came to me to write my animal power book. I had started a completely different book. And when I went to Bali, the animals came to me and said, that's not the book right now. We want you to continue to be a voice with us, for us, and write a new guidebook. And so thankfully my publisher and agents were on board with that. And I scrapped the entire initial concept, pivoted everything over to the book that is now being born and will be out in October. And it's just, I could talk a whole podcast with you about what that voyage was like, just writing that book. So much powerful medicine in it. So, those are just a couple of examples. And I will share, I am giving a talk at a psychedelic conference in November called Meet Delic. And I'm really glad that they asked me to come speak there, because I can be a voice for exactly what you asked and exactly what we're talking about right now. That, there's a lot of surrender that's important. I said to the sacred plant medicine world, I'm here if any of you ever want to call to me. And I waited. I didn't force the issue. Even though so many of my colleagues and friends are facilitators or participants in those ceremonies, I never once entered in just because. I waited for the call. And that's my biggest piece of advice for anyone listening who has a curiosity. When the call comes in, you will know. And Mel, I'm sure you can attest to that. It's a specific feeling. When you are being called by the spirit of a plant medicine. And there's a lot of different ones. And when you hear the call, then it's up to you to decide and to do your homework in terms of, it's also very important to be discerning of who you're sitting with. That is paramount. Who is the teacher? Are they embodied? Do they walk the talk? Are they integrated? Where did they learn from? You really need to ask a lot of questions. And the sitting in plant medicine ceremonies is not a decision to be taken lightly. And I feel you should only ever do it when called. And that's how I have walked that path, and it has served me in miraculous ways. And that's the best thing I can advise to others.
Beautiful. That's so incredible. I really want to dive more into the power animals, like what you described happening on stage. Like that just sounds just wild and amazing in so many ways. And I'm sure for people listening, they want to know how can they connect with their power animals? Is it possible that anyone can do this? Obviously you've been practicing and sitting with different teachers and developing your spiritual gifts for a long time. I'm sure this is all covered in your new book, which I can't wait to read. But can you give anyone some help on like how they can start to create these relationships with these power animals?
So, yes, there are a lot of really beautiful ways that you can start to open up the doorway to the power animal world. And the first vision that's coming in is, if you don't already have an altar space, I always recommend that. And an altar can be something so simple. It does not need to be this extravagant, ornate setup with, a bunch of statues, and you don't need to go out and buy a bunch of things. An altar can be a simple space in your home that is just your designated space for connection point, to connect within yourself, to connect to Great Mother Earth and Great Spirit. And it can perhaps have a piece of sustainable Palo Santo, and maybe there is a stone that you found on a walk that you just love, that little stone, and a candle, and that can be your altar. I mean, it can also just simply be a candle, but that's the place that you can go to reconnect and to be at home. And once you're there, you can simply close your eyes and just begin to open up the invitation, because the power animal allies, they're always there. But for the most part, our guides, they're not invasive, unless you're getting to a divine intervention point, which was the case for me, where I was ignoring the truth of my mission and of myself for long enough that they had to enter in to kind of smack me around a little bit to have me come to my true senses. But for the most part, they stay in the periphery waiting for the invitation. So for those who want to begin to open up that dynamic and rapport, sit at your altar space, connect your root into Great Mother Earth, say hello to her, give an honoring thanks and hello to her, breathe and tune into your heart. Feel that incredible power and juiciness and magnificence of your own heart center. And then connect up to Source, Great Spirit, whoever it is that you speak to. Give an honoring thanks and hello up to Great Spirit. And once you're connected into those 3 points, simply call the power animal forward, call the power animal world forward, and say, I am really ready to get to know you. I am inviting your teachings, your medicine in. I'm, honored to begin this relationship with you. And once you've opened that doorway, if you feel compelled, you can remain with your eyes closed and say, is there a power animal who wishes to present to me at this time? And just stay connected to your heart, stay connected with your breath, and see, spiritual gifts work in different ways. I'm very clairaudient and very clairvoyant, so I see and hear a lot. So you may see an animal present, or you may hear the name or the word of an animal come into your ear. But just be aware. It's a strengthening of your conscious awareness muscle into the unseen realms. See what you sense come in, and if you want to continue the dialogue and ask that animal questions, please do. But you always want to close in an honoring way. Once you feel your time has wrapped up, thank that animal for coming in. And let that animal know, if you wish to continue to work with it, let it know that, invite it into your dreams for continued medicine transmissions and healings. So that's one way. The way that I recommend the most, which you can do. I will have up on my website specifically for those who pre-order the Animal Power book. You will get sent a video, a guided drumming shamanic journey facilitated by me, where I will guide you into the unseen realms, and we will call your power animal forward, and you'll be able to speak with it and receive healing and medicine from it. And so that's the way that I recommend the most, is sitting with a trusted shaman and doing some sort of a rattle or guided or drumming journey facilitated by the shaman to call your animal forward. But but I gave that first example primarily because I want people to remember that we all have shamanic truths inside of us, and you also have the power inside of you to do this on your own. I always want to empower people in that way, that I'm always trying to return them back to themselves. And if they come to me seeking guidance or answers, I'll share what's coming through for me to share, but I always point them back, like, what do you think? And what are you sensing? And what are you picking up on? Because we all have it inside of us.
So great. And the drumming journey for everyone that pre-orders your book, like that sounds just like the perfect, like I couldn't imagine a more perfect pre-order offer. So we're definitely going to include the link for people to get their hands on that when they pre-order the book in the show notes here. And I'm very excited to do that myself as well. So you mentioned like the kind of healing and transformation and medicine that's available when we start to tap into these different spiritual guides, like our power animals. I'd love if you can share some more about like what kind of healing have you experienced from this, and what have you seen happen for other people that start to use these gifts and these guides?
Yes. Yeah. Such a beautiful question. And they have truly provided endless, healing moments for me. The first one that has been talking and whispering in my ear and present with us this whole interview is the deer. And the deer is heart medicine. So it's all about the healing of the heart. And the deer came in right after I had my awakening, because my awakening came from total heartbreak and betrayal. So my previous fiance just, you know, respect in all of it, because it provided my awakening, but it was a very arduous, long chapter in my life in that previous relationship. And once the veil had lifted and deer came in, the teachings and medicine of the deer, just, it urges you, even when you've gone through something like that, where you just feel completely devastated and in the most anguishing emotional turmoil that you've probably ever known. Her softness and gentleness, yet fierce power, urges your heart to stay committed to healing and to stay committed to remaining open, because we have two possible pathways when something like that happens. One pathway is to completely shut our hearts down and to completely close off out of fear, and to put very strong defenses around ourselves, because, and it's understandable. We don't want to go through that same level of anguish and torment and pain again. But we really, staying connected to our heart is the key to everything. It's the key to the universes. It's the key to, our greatest intelligence and greatest intuition. And we all, deep down inside of all of our souls, we do have this yearning to learn what unconditional love really is, how we can find it within our own selves to unconditionally love ourselves, and how we can unite. If an intention is to unite in partnership, how we can align with a partner who has the ability to hold that unconditional loving space for us. And all of what I just shared is what Dear teaches. So she really, I attribute the fact that I was able to ascend and be like the phoenix rising through that process and allow it to completely change myself and my entire life for the better after that awakening, I attribute a lot of it to deer. And the last little bit of that story that I'll share is she has been a long time power animal ally for me. Some of the animals will come in very briefly. Like, let's say you've got a really like big business meeting that you've just got to ante up and get in your power so strongly for. You might want to call the rhinoceros in to just, just be so embodied in an earthly way and in your wisdom and your business capacities. And you need to deliver a home run meeting to get everyone on board for your vision. You want to call the rhinoceros in to empower you in that way. But perhaps that's the only time you ever work with the rhinoceros. Then we all have a core power animal who is with us since we are born. So for me, that's the Black Panther. And that animal is with you 24/7 for your entire life. And then we have allies like the deer for me, where she entered in upon my awakening and stayed with me for years and years and years and took me through every different layer and healing process that I needed to get to finally get to that place of unconditional love for myself, to get to that place of sovereignty within my own self, so that I could be the energetic alignment and frequency that I needed to be to have my sacred union partner, who is Luke's story, enter in. So she worked with me forever. And towards she's still here, but she really played a huge part in Luke and I getting together because in sacred medicine peyote ceremonies, I really was called to that medicine in a very loud and clear way. And in the indigenous traditions that I sit with and work with specifically for that medicine, the animal that works with that medicine is Kayumari, and that is the sacred blue deer. And so I had been called to that ceremony and that medicine for many years. And then Luke was called outside of me. I did not recommend, I did not invite him in. That medicine came to him in his own way. And there's a whole long story around all of that. But we were still friends at that point. Well, we had just gone on our first date. We were on our very first date after being friends for many years when he told me that he was feeling called to sit with, he referred to it as my medicine because he knew that was the one I had sat with the most. And I wanted to know, who are you sitting with? Well, it just so happens it was with my teachers and my facilitators, and he didn't know that. So even though I had flown back to New York City, and I know this is a long story, so apologies, but there's so much to all of this. Yeah, I had flown from LA back to New York City, where I was still living at the time. And he then said, "Do you want to come to this ceremony?" And I thought, you know what? I do feel called. So I flew back across the country to LA. He and I went out into the desert, and it was on our third date, sitting in sacred desert lands in a sacred teepee peyote ceremony, where he and I, there's a lot of things that happened to have us come to this realization that we wanted to be together. And it all happened on our third date. But it's just one example of a very many year thread of how, when you begin to work with these allies, you have to stay the course and you have to be in trust and surrender. And I did that for enough years that it eventually aligned me with Luke. So it's a long story, but it's worth telling because it's miraculous.
Wow, so incredible. And it really feels like what I'm hearing and understanding is that it's not like a one time then you heal something like that. It's more like you receive these guides that help you navigate through different chapters and different things that need to be healed over time. And I think that's more powerful, and I think that's really important for people to realize that it's not just like a quick fix in any way. It's a relationship that gets cultivated and built.
Yes, yes. And I'm so glad you said that, because the phrase that was coming up as you were sharing that is life is ceremony. And so it's in that one example that exemplifies that, living in this way and connecting to the infinite, medicinal powers and teachings and allies and guides that we have always ever present. In my recommendation, it's not something that like is separate from your everyday life. This is life is ceremony, and it is this all uniting, all encompassing, beautiful, pulsing, divine orb that begins to you begin a co-creative dance with source, with divine, with the unseen realms. And that's when you come to know that the unseen realms are just as real, if not more real, than the seen realms. And there shouldn't be any delineation. Maybe in the beginning of your path, there is a little bit more compartmentalization of like, okay, I go to my job, and then when I get home, I work with my tarot cards, and I say my prayers and things like that. But if you stay the course and you keep walking down that path long enough, you just get into the most miraculous one orb of all that is. And there's no separation anymore between life and ceremony. Ceremony is life.
Oh, thank you for that powerful reminder. And I have really felt that this last few months. I've been going through a huge portal of turmoil and transformation and all sorts. And I've really felt, wow, like I am in a ceremony, like life is a ceremony. And now I'm just in the most just experiencing the most incredible synchronicity and perfection of moments and timing, and everything is just reminding me that I'm so supported and I'm so held when I do have that trust and that surrender and that willingness to be guided and be led and be shown the magic too. So I really appreciate that reminder.
I want to honor you though with that piece, because and being a witness a bit to this journey of the last few months, you have been a willing alchemist, and you have allowed what has occurred to be your teacher, and you're constantly asking the questions, and you're leaning in instead of running away or turning your back to all. I mean, that when something like that level of a medicine force comes into your life,
Mm.
yes, it can be absolutely terrifying, and you do want to feel it all, and some of the feeling it all is not favorable. It's not pleasant, but you have, from my perspective, let yourself welcome whatever was entering in, because you trusted and you knew it was medicine serving you. You knew it was not medicine coming in to take you down. You knew there was teachings in it for you. And so you continued to ask the questions, you continued to feel, and through that process, you I am literally seeing it right now. You have allowed an entirely new world to open up for yourself. And that's what happens when one becomes an alchemist or a master alchemist. You're able to turn fear into love, and turn scary, challenging experiences into the most miraculous ones that have served you. And so it's been, beautiful for me to witness you leaning in, feeling and falling on the ground, getting back up, leaning in. And that is the most beautiful dance of all in this earth walk.
Oh my God, I love you. Thank you so much. It feels so, it just feels so good to be witnessed and seen by you and that way. And just your words, what you shared, just thank you. That really means so, so much. Alyson, I feel like everything that comes out of your mouth is just pure medicine and just channeled straight from source. I just absolutely love you, and I love the work that you're putting out into the world. I want everyone to go and buy your book and get the drumming journey on pre-order as well. I always ask 3 questions to my guests that are a little bit more personal. The first is, what is something in your life right now that you are loving?
Okay. I'm going to tune in. Oh, wow. Okay. The answer came right in a second. I closed my eyes. So, yeah, I mean, I'm sitting, for those of you that watch the video or the video clip that Mel shares, I'm sitting in this funny little old school library room at this tiny little hotel in a very small town in Indiana where I grew up. And, I actually had a really beautiful, powerful moment this morning as I was just at my own little makeshift altar that I travel with and connecting into you, Mel, and the fact that I was looking forward to seeing your face and being on your podcast today. And all of a sudden, this light bulb went off, and I thought, wow, because where this tiny little hotel sits, when I was a little girl, I was a very intense elite athlete and distance runner, and my dad was my coach. And I used to train on these exact streets that run right past this hotel. So back on this property, I used to be here in this old identity as a tiny little girl, like pushing myself and that whole previous life that I had as this athlete. And I realized, wow, now here I've returned again. I've never stayed at this hotel until today. And I'm here with Luke, and he's here meeting my family for the first time. And I'm here, and my truth and my full divine power as a shaman, a spiritual teacher, and an author, getting to share about my book on this interview today with you. And do you see what I mean about this, like, full circle talk about alchemy, coming back home as me being in true home alignment with myself? And so what I've really been loving is the fact that I've put in all of the work that I have to be with my partner, Luke, and the fact that he is here, meeting my childhood best friend for the first time and meeting my family for the first time. It's a really powerful, beautiful moment for me.
Wow, I love that answer. And I love those full circle moments where you get to be in the same place as before, but as a completely different being. Oh, so powerful. Next question is, what is something that turns you on?
Okay. Okay. Let me tune in. Just give me a moment. I always like to just give really honest, real time, transparent answers. So let me ask my soul, my heart, that question. What is something that turns me on? What is something that turns me on? It might sound cliche, it might sound so simple, but it came in both times that I asked that question. So I really want to honor it. And it's two things. It's kindness. I really, um, you know, I really enjoy people who are kind, and I really enjoy people, and I get turned on by people just willing to be open and willing to learn and willing to hold a space of and embrace. Um, Gosh, I wish I could remember my dear friend Aubert. He posted when he shared, when he had been on my podcast, he posted a picture on his Instagram. Oh, I remember what it is. He said something like, it's a time calling out or canceling out is so old paradigm. I'm all about calling people in. Instead of calling out, let's call people in. And I thought, yes, that is the most succinct, beautiful, powerful way of putting it. And it's all tied into what I'm trying to get at here. It's like, we're all here going through so much. Let's give each other a little bit of a break in a compassionate space. And I'm not saying at all to excuse people's behaviors that are hurtful. No, 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 no. I have very strong boundaries. I am an incredibly strong discerner of like who I want to be around and who I don't, and where I want to be and where I don't. It's not giving people a permission slip, but it's instead of condemning and criticizing people, let's just ask people more questions and let's do our own work. If you're finding that you have a tendency of criticizing someone in a really harsh way, or judging people really, really quick, take a pause and ask yourself, what pain are you holding within yourself that is unresolved? Because that is the root place that all those behaviors come from. And if more of us devote to taking responsibility, to really facing our own selves and to doing the shadow work and to exploring and investigating our own selves, we then become this quote: when you know yourself, you know the world. And when you know yourself and you know the world, you're able to see the oneness, you're able to hold more compassion and non judgment, and you're able to hold a space of unification instead of separation. So I'll leave it at that. And I believe your listeners will get what I'm trying to say, but it's let's call in instead of calling out.
Beautiful. I love that response. And finally, when was the last time you experienced magic?
Ah, goodness, all the time. I mean, it's truly ever present. Let me tune in though to see if there's a specific little story that wants to present. One second. When is the last time I experienced magic? Ah, okay. Of course, circles us right back to the beautiful animal power theme and the power animal world. So Luke and I got to Indiana yesterday, where I'm from, and we drove over to where my mom lives for them to meet for the first time. And when we were walking, we spent time together, had dinner together, beautiful time. And as we were walking out of her where she lives, there, right on the exit of the doorway, when you walk outside from her home, there were 4 eggs, like huge. Those watching the video, you can see where my hand is. I'm giving an example of how big, like really big eggs, 4 of them laying right at the bottom of her stairs where some flowers that she planted at the entryway of her house are. There's 4 eggs. And we're like, what the heck? Where did these eggs come from? They weren't there when we walked in. And we called my mom to the doorway and her jaw dropped and she was like, those were not there yesterday. Those were not there earlier. Where did these 4 big eggs come from? We were so mesmerized. And so then today, my sister, who is over at my mom's house, she texted me a picture, and the mama duck was sitting on these 4 eggs today. And it's just so incredible that this beautiful animal chose my mom's home, to be that safe, sacred space for her to incubate and to keep her 4 beautiful baby duckies, in their eggs. I think she sits on them for 25 to 28 days. And what was really meaningful to me from a power animal perspective is that the duck represents monogamy and prosperous, thriving, healthy marital relations and sacred unions. And the fact that Luke and I went there for the very first time, and as we were walking out, the animal that represents like sacred union and fidelity was literally laying 4 eggs, at the doorway. I was like, okay, it's those moments. There's no mistaking those teaching moments. The fact that duck came in to say hello, to honor Luke and I for the work that we've done, and to say, thank you to my mom for having me, and just so many layers to it. But that was definitely a very magical moment that just happened yesterday and today.
Wow. I love those moments. It's just like, whenever those moments happen, I always feel like it's just like of course the duck is there. Like, of course, this is the exact time that this would happen. It's just Of course. And oh, Alyson, I just love everything that you share so much. This has just been such an honor and such a pleasure. Where can everyone come and find you and check out more of your medicine and more of your work?
Thank you, sister. Yes, I'm most active on Instagram, and my handle there is at I am Alyson Charles, and Alyson is Alyson. I do have a TikTok, and I do occasionally get into that magic. It's Shaman Alyson Charles over there, and my website is alysoncharles.com, and that's where you can go to find the links to get the pre-order for the Animal Power book. And when you do that, you will be sent the video guided shamanic drumming journey for you to meet your own power animal.
Thank you, Alyson. I really, really appreciated your time today.
Likewise, Queen. Love you so much.
So I hope you took so much away from that episode. Please do pre-order a copy of Alyson's new book. The link is in the show notes. And as always, if you want to dive deeper with all of our podcast guests and ask them your personal questions, you can do so inside of our membership, the Goddess Collective, where Alyson has also been in there recording an extra bonus segment, as do all of our guests, answering some of the more personal questions from our members. So if you loved this episode, please do share it on your story. Make sure you subscribe, leave us a review so we can reach more incredible people around the world. And I'll catch you next time. May your next week be filled with love and sex and magic.